Dating has become a zero-sum game. When some men win, the rest lose. We are living in a dog-eat-dog dating market right now. But it never used to be this way, as I'm going to explain in this video what changed in the last 20 years, how it was before, and how it is today, where there's essentially a monopoly of the top 10% of men who are hoarding all of the women. So make sure you keep watching till the very end to discover the full picture of just what's going on and how terrible things have gotten. We'll start with a quick definition. What is a zero-sum game? Put simply, it means a situation when one person's gain is equivalent to another's loss. For example, if I beat you in a game of poker for $1,000, it's made myself $1,000 richer, and you $1,000 poorer. There's one main criteria that makes a game zero-sum. The amount of whatever is to be gained, or stuff up for grabs, is fixed. Therefore, whatever one person wins or takes means there is now less for everyone else. So, now how does this relate to the dating market? Well, in dating, the number of men and women in the available pool is fixed. Or, a more accurate way of saying it is the ratio is fixed. Because obviously the actual number of men and women can change depending on how many people are born. But because there is roughly one man for every one woman, the ratio remains constant. So, given this fact that the ratio always remains constant, it means the only way every man and every woman can be successful in the market is if everyone pairs off one by one. Or to describe the system in a single word, monogamy. Now, interestingly, this is how things had been for the previous millennium. And when monogamy was in force, the system ran quite smoothly, there weren't many people being left out, and it provided a rigid family structure to allow proper raising of children for the next generation. However, as recently as the last 20 years or so, those 1,000 years of stability have been completely dismantled. Meaning, we are now at the point where the dating market has been monopolised by the top 10% of men who hoard all of the women. Explaining a tiny bit further, there's now more or less 3 tiers. The top 10% of men, 6-foot, good-looking chads who have their top pick of whichever women they please, and most of these are the highest quality ones, mind you. Second, the outside 60% who are just barely getting by. These are guys who will occasionally get a girlfriend that lasts 6 months, possibly a nightclub fling here and there, matches with the overweight, tatted women on Tinder, so they're literally hanging on by a thread. Then finally, the bottom 30% of men are left out of the market completely. These are your basement dwellers, obese guys, sub-5 looks, and Warhammer enthusiasts. This is how the current dating market looks at the moment. If you're a newer viewer to the channel, hopefully you've learned something new. And if you're a regular viewer, I'd guess you likely already know most of this stuff, and there's not much original for what's just been said. But anyway, for the next part of the video, I'm going to explore how do I know this is happening. That dating is a zero-sum game, and the bottom 90% of men are faring worse and worse off. Well, here's some data. It recently was discovered 63% of men from 18 to 29 identify as single, while only 34% of women do. How on earth is this possible? And no, the answer is not because guys in their 30s are dating down to girls in their 20s. As the gap still exists, albeit a little less for this age group too. Furthermore, if you look at marriage data, roughly 80% of people marry someone within 5 years of their own age. So, I believe the real reason there is this massive discrepancy in the young age group is because the top 10% of men are monopolising, therefore leaving most lower tier men out. Furthermore, this top 10% is for the most part doing it without any of the women's knowledge. Here's an example. In this news article headline, it reads, 3 women discovered they were dating the same man. They dumped him and went on a months-long road trip together. Now, before the point the man was discovered and was able to date the 3 women simultaneously, if he was going to answer in the previous study, he would say he's not single. And so would the 3 women. However, the man would only count as 1 data point, but the women would count as 3. The man who is in this situation, who is almost certainly a top 10%er mind you, has monopolised 2 extra women who would then be taken off the market and therefore unavailable for bottom 90%ers. That's the reality we are living right now. But then this begs the question, is this fair? There's 2 ways of thinking about it. 1. Some people believe all is fair in love and war, and the top 10%er should be able to do whatever he wants and date as many people as he wants. 2. Others would argue he was only able to date 3 women at a time by telling false information. In other words, he deceived the women into thinking they were his one and only girlfriend, but in reality he had other women behind closed doors all along. You can decide yourself which set of morals you believe is right. This brings me to one of the main points I want to talk about in this video. The dating strategy known as spinning plates. 35% of you already know what this means and 49% of you don't. If you know what it means, you can judge the quality of my explanation. If you've ever seen a circus performer do that trick where they'll have a bunch of plates on sticks and he's constantly running back and forth trying to keep them all up in the air at the same time. This is essentially what the top 10% of men are doing in the dating market. The performer is the top 10%er and the plates are the women. However, there is an added layer in the dating world. Because if the plates are able to communicate with each other, chances are they'll understand the performer's game and immediately fall off. Therefore, it's in the performer's interest to keep the plates as far away from one another as possible. Now, how does this get implemented in the real world? Answer: online dating. Of all the things that have made dating worse and harder for the average guy, nothing comes close to reinforcing that than online dating. I mean, if you are an average guy, you would be extremely angry wanting to remove these platforms if you understood how much trouble they have caused. But the only reason you don't is because you've already accepted this is how it is and the change has happened gradually in the last 20 years. The main problem with online dating is it has handed the top 10% of men an easy medium to spin plates without any of the women knowing about it. The women think Chad is their boyfriend, but the Chad just sees them as plates. And 30 years ago, this never would have been possible because if a top 10%er tried setting it up back then, it would have resulted in the women finding out about his game, so it would have been stopped in its tracks before even taking off. But now, everything is different thanks to online dating. The top 10% of men can spin plates, which therefore pushes you out as an average guy. And I can even speak from experience, I could be in that position of a monopolizer if I wanted to. Just last week in a video, I showed how I arranged 9 dates in 1 week with a maxed out profile as an average guy. I consider myself slightly above average, but with the right photos and enhancements, one of my pics got ranked in the top 5% on Photo Feeler. Check out the full video if you want to see the complete experiments. But the point I'm making is, of those 9 dates I got, yeah sure, a couple may have flaked. Then another couple wouldn't have been interested after the first meetup. But I could still predict that I could have gotten 2, maybe 3, or even 4 women to commit to me long term, with me pretending to be in a relationship with them. But in reality, I'm just messing them about and keeping all of the women's communication separate. It really would have been that easy. And that's just in 1 week. Imagine how much more exacerbated it could have been if I did the experiments longer. or if I was 6 inches taller or naturally in the top 5% of facial looks. Now you can understand just how far the monopolisation can go. To monopolise requires 2 things. 1. Enough value as a man, which, as I've kept on saying, starts at the top 10%. And 2. Separating the women so none of them find out about your game. It really is that simple. And given the current way the dating market is, you can see how these 2 criteria can easily be held for a certain number of men. The only problem is that as a byproduct, since it's a zero-sum game, it spoils the chances for average to below average guys in the market. Anyway, hopefully this video has been a wake-up call for most of you watching. And without finishing on a low note, I'd like to spend a fraction of time asking, where do we go from here? Well, you've basically got 2 options. 1. Quit, opt out, accept, take the easy route, forget it, live alone. Or 2. Work, grasp, climb, and try whatever you can to reach the top 10%. Which, although is definitely not guaranteed, even if you go from a bottom 40%er to a top 20%er, you'd at least see an improvement to your dating life. And it is for that very reason why I'm pleased to announce my personalised and affordable for all looks maxing service, which at the basic level tells you where you currently stand on the 1 to 10 scale, and in the premium package tells you step-by-step points what you can do to improve your appearance as a man. It's a great way to support the channel if you think you've learned something, and you get a good amount of value in exchange for a small amount of money in return. The link will be the first in the description, and even if you've never bought anything from any YouTuber before, I'd highly recommend what I have to offer. You get a complete breakdown of what your strengths and weaknesses are, a rating out of 10, and most importantly, the steps to improve so you can hopefully climb the ladder and get your rating higher. So, one last time, if you're interested, head over to my website now through the link in the description. I'll see you over there.